guys, this is Hamidi Jassim, author of The Terrorist Whisperer and host of The Black Side Show. In today's episode, we'll be hosting Major Anthony Smith of the U.S. Army, who was attacked way back in 2004 in Camp Taji, Iraq by members of Al-Qaeda. Major Anthony Smith took a hit by an RPG to the body and was immediately announced dead and placed on a body bag until a miracle happened. If you enjoy our show, kindly make sure you like and subscribe. Until we see you again, enjoy the show. Member of Al-Qaeda shoot you with an RPG from the back of a truck.
Felt its impact, and later on I found out it was an RPG that hit me.
How many times do you hear that some human being got hit by an RPG rocket and made it? You were announced dead, and you were put on a body bag.
Correct. Total surgeries I had was 64.
So I would like to welcome you, Anthony. Welcome to the Black Side Show.
I'm glad to be here. Awesome.
So I want to start with you back when you were, what state were you living at the time?
I was living in Arkansas, in the Blytheville area, northeast Arkansas side, right up on the border of Missouri.
And before like getting into this craziness of your Iraq deployment and you joining the military, I know you have a brother that passed away who was in the military, who actually did a tour during Desert Storm and then came back home and got killed by a drunk driver, which I think what inspired you to really want to join the military and do something that you always admired about your brother. So if you can please start telling me about that.
Yeah, when I was younger, my brother was actually deployed to Afghanistan at the time. And then he came home from Afghanistan, and he was part of ADA, part of defusing bombs and going out there getting bombs defused that were set out and IEDs that were going on at the time. And he traveled back home that day. And while he sent his soldiers home, he normally leaves earlier, but he stayed back to make sure all the soldiers made it home since they just came back from that deployment. And as he was coming home that night, he was struck by a drunk driver that was doing 75 and a 30 and ran a red light and drove straight through his car. He became that big inspiration to me because originally I wasn't going to go into the military. I did the little RTC stuff and all that. And I was about to drop out of it. He said, well, let's take a better line. Let's stay in the military science program, which was an RTC program, and become an officer and do better than what I did.
Wow.
So he survived a deployment to Afghanistan, defusing bombs and everything, and only to be killed by a drunk driver here in the U.S.
Correct.
Crazy.
It's tough. So how old were you when your brother was killed?
It happened in 1994. It was right after I had just got back home from Germany and was getting ready to get out the military.
Oh, so you were already in the military at the time.
Right. I was I had came in as a 01 officer, second lieutenant, but I kind of didn't like the way things were going at the time. And then my brother was always encouraging me to let me know there's always a better route, find a better route, make it work for you. But when he got killed by a drunk driver, I felt like I had to fulfill that obligation he had. So I said I was going to be, not, you know, I wasn't slacking no more after that. You know what I'm saying? I took it way more serious.
So you were getting ready to get out of the service, and then you decided to stay in because your brother was killed and you wanted to continue his legacy.
Correct.
Nice.
You know, I couldn't just let that
So tell me
pass,
about
you know?
how, yeah. So tell me about like, you know, when you decided to join the military, Anthony, how did that come through your mind after losing your brother and everything your family have endured? Tell me about your career, how you decided to join the military.
Well, I come from a military family, first of all the way back to World War II. I've always had somebody in the family that was in the family. My dad was Air Force. My sister was Army. She lives in Biloxi, Mississippi now, working as a superintendent down there. My brother, which we just talked about, he was in the Army, and I decided to follow in those same footsteps to go into the Army as well. But I originally started to go in as enlisted. My brother talked me into becoming an officer at the time. But I originally was an athlete. I started off running track and field at Alcorn State University. And I started trying to play a little football and basketball. It didn't turn out the way I wanted to. And then I met Captain Alexander running down the street one day. And he said, hey, come run with me. And he taught me in getting into the ROTC program on that end.
Was your brother enlisted or commissioned?
My brother was enlisted.
So why did he convince you to go commissioned?
Because one, there's going to be more money. And he felt I was more smarter to do what I was doing than just being enlisted. And he wanted me to help pay that way for other brothers that were trying to become officers as well.
Okay.
So were you the first officer in the family?
Yes, I was the first officer in the family. And I got ragged on every family reunion.
Gave you a hard time for, being a commissioned officer.
Wait, did your brother ever have to salute you?
One time, and then he sidekicked me in the stomach.
It was just, yep. It was like, that was it. I mean, I saw your family and I was inspired by how your family was so patriotic. It came from being farmers and having what's true American background is, right? And now moving into, 2003, the United States entered the war in Iraq. And, prior to you getting deployed to Iraq as a U.S. Army officer, what was going on through your head, man? What was your thoughts? What was happening in your head when you saw that, we were going into Iraq?
Well, my biggest thing was for my soldiers, to make sure my soldiers were taken care of, make sure they had everything in line before we went in. But my biggest concern that I had was how everything was functioning in Iraq. Before I got there, there were soldiers getting killed by IEDs. Different routes were changed at that time. They tried to make the routes easier, but they seemed to be more dangerous, even though they were easier routes. And I was worried about those routes I was going to put my soldiers on. So I was really at a high level of anticipation before I went into Iraq.
Were you there for the initial invasion or were you there after?
I was there with the initial invasion.
Oh, so you went in March 2003?
Not March, April of 2003.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that March 23rd, I'm pretty sure that's the day we started bombing. And then we sent Marines in first, and then the Army followed, right?
Yeah.
Right, we followed.
Because Mike is in the Navy, so he was actually in the sea out there trying to support the ground troops.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of crazy because you were in the Navy. You guys were doing completely different thing while the troops were in the ground,
Yeah, my ship was the first one to launch Tomahawk missiles into Baghdad.
Into Baghdad, right? That's crazy.
On the 23rd of March, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, man, I think even the soldiers that entered Iraq in 2003 weren't really sure what they were gonna come across, right? They really didn't expect what's gonna happen, and now after all these years, I've talked to so many guys that were part of the initial invasion. Truly, just nobody knew, man. Nobody expected it. Even Iraqis didn't expect it. And Anthony, so when you deployed, what was the first thing when you entered Iraq? So take me through details into when you entered Iraq. What was going on through your head? How did that go entering Iraq? Where did you enter Iraq from? All of that detail.
Well, we actually entered Iraq through Kuwait, and we went into an area called Camp Victory, and we started doing setups there. Then we went into, we left there going into, it was called Camp Cook at the time when I first was going in, and they turned it into Camp Taji. and they had
I
just
see.
hit that area pretty good. So when I started coming in, it was like terror. It looked like you're coming through a junkyard. You know, it was
It's
real.
true.
It was real junky, and I'm trying not to be too graphic, but that's how I saw it. It's like coming through one of those old junkyards where it got tore down pretty bad. The sewage was bad, and we had to go in and rebuild and set up that file for first cab to come in.
Perhaps I still remember because me and you were there the same year in Camp Taji. I was there in 2004, and I remember that the base is massive. Camp Taji in Iraq is one of the major bases, actually, that's outside of Baghdad. Perhaps there are no major bases in Baghdad except for one, and this is literally the biggest Iraqi military base that sits right outside of Baghdad, literally at the gate of Baghdad. It was a massive base. You have to understand, Saddam Hussein has built these massive military bases over the years. So when the U.S. military took over Camp Taji, they couldn't really just take over the whole entire place. It was massive.
Correct.
I mean, you're talking, this was the size of your hometown.
Oh, wow.
So it was really massive. So the U.S. military did not really want to go and try to protect all this major city, pretty much of a military city. They decided to set up a FOP inside of the base and kind of leave it all to the wild. And as Anthony mentioned, it was a junkyard because all the tanks, all the armored divisions, all the artillery units were all in that camp. So you just saw nothing but rubbish.
Was all the military vehicles and everything, were they all bombed out?
Exactly.
Oh.
So this is what I was going to say. It was just military vehicles. Yep. And you'll see like rocks and destruction all over the place. And the U.S. base really took this little small nugget in the middle of the FOB. And you're talking about this is a military base full of warehouses, full of multiple entries. And I think this is the mistake the U.S. military had made, put themselves in that big, massive place, knowing that no one would dare to enter that place. And you have to understand, Iraqis know that place pretty well because the military was mandatory during Saddam Hussein time. So the Iraqis know that base pretty well. They know the entries. They know every little secret door in that place. And they set themselves inside of this little FOB with this little 10 DFAC. And there is more to Camp Taji. Camp Taji, where it's located, it's right next to the tribes. They're pretty much the cousins of the people in the Anbar province in Fallujah and Ramadi.
Correct.
These were this is the same tribe. So it's Ad-Dulami tribe in Anbar, in Fallujah and Ramadi. They got a little small tribe that kind of like come out of that same tribe. Sits right in Taji.
So this tribe, is this the bad guys?
This is the bad guys.
Oh.
This is elite bad guys.
So the bad guys know exactly where you are, and they're extremely familiar with
the place. And you just set yourself right inside of this major city.
Wow.
In the wrong spot, literally, towards the end of it. So that's really what it is. So Anthony, when you first got into Camp Taji, how was your experience?
When I first went into Camp Taji, and based on how everything was looking when I first got there, I kind of had that little, that little pucker factor where you're going like some of the stuff that you were saying. I said, how are we going to take care of all of this? And because of my quartermaster background and my 88 Mike background with stuff, I got assigned to what was called a battalion material management company. So what I was doing, I was mainly a convoy commander and working some QRF team. So when I first got in there, I kind of had that little pucker factor, like, you don't want to say like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you had to strap yourself up and say like, I got to make it. My soldiers got to make it. We got to make this thing work because this is where we're at.
So you kind of felt like you were in over your head a little bit.
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, yes.
So what was your main responsibility when you were there? You said QRF. That's a quick response force.
Quick reaction force.
Quick reaction force.
Oh, my primary.
So you were so when troops were in contact and they needed backup, you would provide backup for them.
Correct. So, but my primary was the convoys. getting convoys from Gunslinger to Anaconda and Balad. So I had to run those roads a lot. But when we were on post and they needed people to go out and support, I had to have a QRF team on standby in case they needed it.
So these 3 points that you just mentioned, those were other forward operating bases?
Correct.
Okay. So you're basically providing defense for the convoys and then also quick reaction force.
Correct.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So how did you prior to the attack happening in Camp Taji? And I know I have been attacked in Camp Taji myself in the range towards the end of that base, knowing that area pretty well. Prior to the attack, what was your feeling like? Did you feel something was going to go down? Did you feel that the U.S. military in that base weren't really secure as it's supposed to be? Did you feel the first protection plan wasn't as what it should be?
Well, I personally didn't think the force protection plan was as strong as it could be, but we had what we had to work with. So there were some areas, if you remember Camp Taji, there were some back areas where it looked like houses, old houses and fences that were still gated. Like they can get through those and they can actually get in and go back out willingly unless you can just catch them coming through that area. So I did have those concerns about that force protection. And along that back road going into the airstrip, I had some worries about that. But we had the group that we had was awesome. It just that we just got spread thin, to be honest with you.
I mean, I gotta tell you, man, I know the base pretty well. Like my days in that base, God, when I got attacked in the range, I really kind of I kind of felt that we were not secure, that there was holes in there somehow. And I know that at the time, in certain aspects, certain angles of the base were not protected by U.S. military personnel. It was like some random security company that's supposed to have locals or whatever is just a guy with an AK-47 on top of the hill. And I kind of felt at the time that it was the beginning of the war. The United States were not really ready to understand how this enemy is operating, what is the enemy style of attack. And the first protection really wasn't top-notch. So this is where the enemy really noticed that they could actually take advantage and they can actually get into the base, infiltrate. And some of these FOBs were small. The number of the American soldiers in the FOB were not as many. And you locate them in an area that you really didn't have much resistance when you entered Iraq in 2003. Like Camp Taji did not have much resistance when they entered Iraq in 2003. But once the U.S. military got settled in that place, that's when this enemy started figuring out the holes. Where are you making a mistake? What are you doing? What are you like? I mean, as I said in previous podcasts, it took them a while to figure out what the U.S. soldiers were like. And it took them about a couple months to realize, they're not really as tough as we think they are. They're making mistakes. They might not have the technologies we think they are. They may not have these magical glasses and night visions that we think they are. So they really started planning their comeback. And I think the comeback is what shocked the whole entire country, because the attacks in 2004, everything that went down in 2004 in Iraq is completely different than any other years of the 5 years war in Iraq. Reason why? Because in 2004, this is when they were way too confident to face you face to face on a gunfight.
Correct.
So when you're talking about really most craziest gunfights of the Iraq war, look at my life. Where did I go into a gunfight? In Haifa Street in 2004. Yep. Where did he go into a gunfight? In Camp Taji in 2004. Where did I almost get shot in the face? In Camp Taji in 2004. So that's what just goes to show you that in 2004, they were testing the waters. And that's what made them really get confident.
So you think that during the initial invasion in 2003, they just kind of sat back and kind of analyzed us to see what we were doing, and then they exploited our weaknesses?
Definitely. That's actually statements been made to been the leaders of these groups recently in the Iraqi media that they were regrouping.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know how to communicate with one another. They started bringing the old military guys that were in these bases. They started getting plans, maps, everything they're looking for. So it took them a little bit to regroup. But once they regrouped, you were facing some former Republican guards. You were facing a professional former military guys who don't have a job anymore. And that is the scary part.
So do you think the U.S. forces... what was that, Anthony?
I said one of the scariest parts was them getting back together and organizing. We kind of, I think with us as a whole, I think we misstepped not understanding how smart some of these guys were in combat. And it turned into more like, if you've ever been in guerrilla warfare, it's like they turned guerrilla warfare to urban. They just did it in the urban sense. Hit, miss, run, sneak attacks, tricks. And they slowly got back together because that built the other confidence up to bring the other guys back in. So they became they became a good insurgent force to fight against. But we didn't expect them to be that, I would say be that smart, but I don't know if that's mean to me. But they were more well planned and more quicker, faster, and sneakier than we thought they were going to be. We actually thought they were going to be scared and run because you know what happened before. But these guys didn't get scared and run. They stood. They tried to stand their ground, which was different from when we was in Desert Storm.
So you think that we underestimated them because we thought that they would be scared, but maybe they were braver than we thought because they have really nothing to lose, right?
Correct.
I mean, I want you to take me back to the day of the attack, and take me back and like from the beginning of that day. They clearly planned an attack that was a major attack. And I don't know what the intent was. Was it to take over the base or just cause us as much damage? But take me slowly in details as when you woke up that day, what was going on in your head?
Well, I woke up that day and I woke up to orders that said that I was going to be branch transferred to 92 Alpha and I was going to be promoted to Major. That's what I woke up to that day. You know how you get that thrill that you're getting ready to go. I'm thinking, I'm like, all right, I got this together. I'm going to Anaconda now, and I'll be working at a warehouse, which I thought Anaconda was really a more secure base. Fob that was set up. You know, you had the Air Force there, you had the Marines there, you had the Army there. So going to work in that warehouse would have been a more easier job and safer job than where I was on Taji. So I was kind of excited then. They gave us the day off because we were supposed to be leaving that next day out, going to Camp Taji. So my group kind of like, we a lot of guys folks got to go to the DFAC, make phone calls. I was relaxing, writing letters home and stuff, making sure I did that part. And then I had actually sat down and started cleaning my weapon. And, we also had our pistols. We did a little weapons cleaning. Then we started playing cards and started playing dominoes because it was a more relaxed. It was one of the most relaxing days when it went from, when you say waking up from the morning all the way to the attack. It was one of the most relaxing days we ever had because we was getting ready to move. You know what I'm saying? And in my mind, I'm going like, okay, this is going to be somebody else's problem. I'm going to leave them as much as they need to know before we take off because I felt their bunkers need to be built up harder with the sandbags. I felt the bunkers were kind of too small for people to be getting into. I felt like they need to close down the backside. But in my mind, I'm going like, okay, this is going to be somebody else's problem, and I hope they can get it right. And then about 2 o'clock that morning, the next day, on April 24th, that's when the alarms went off. And then we shot to the bunkers. But there were a couple of people that I guess they didn't hit the alarms and stuff. So when they did roll call, they weren't in the bunkers, and we knew exactly where some of them were. So we took off to go find those soldiers.
And what was the attack like? Like when it started? What was the attack like when it first started at the base?
When it first started at the base, the the alarms went off. The first time the alarms went off, because I want to make sure I had this in the right car. The first time the alarms went off, nothing happened. You know what I'm saying? We thought it was a false alarm, but you know how everybody gear up and go to the bunker, and it's like, oh, cool. And so it was actually given an all clear at the time. Everything's good, everything's good. And right at that moment, while we were doing the Miller roll call, we started hearing boom, boom, boom. They just started shooting mortars into the base. So that's when we started figuring out, like, hey, we got to get these other guys up and get them back in the bunker. So I shot out to go find 2 guys that were in the trailer. And on my way finding those 2 guys, I ran into 2 nurses that were hiding up under, we actually had deuce and a half. So hold on, you got to remember the deuce and a half and the 5-ton. We had the old deuce and a half they were hiding under. So I grabbed them and took off running with them to the bunker. And
so you ran basically through the motors falling into the base.
Correct. But they weren't in our area. They was just, you can hear the sounds of the mortars hitting. But, you know, they kind of got scared and thought it was getting close, so they just ducked under the deuce and a half. And I told them, like, now you got time, get your butts up in a nice way. I didn't say butts. I'm trying to be, but grabbed them and led them to where they needed to be at the time. And once I made it back to that bunker, that's when I guess they had walked it into our area. You know what I'm saying? And that's when the guys.
So at that point, they entered the base.
Correct.
So like at that point, members of Al-Qaeda have actually broken into the base. And in your way back, you didn't realize that these terrorists were actually right there. These members of Al-Qaeda were right inside of the fob, just feet away from you.
Right. Because, you know what? Sometimes I kind of like blame myself. And sometimes, you know, because I was supposed to be going to a trailer to get some folks, right? But I saw them and I wanted to get them to the bunker and then get back to the trailer. And if I had went straight to the trailer, I probably would have known what else was going on. But I had to get those ladies to that bunker. I just felt I need to get that first and then get to the trailer because I felt the trailer was more secure from attack than somebody being up under a deuce and a half. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes I think like maybe if I went the other way first, then I would have known those guys were on the fob, and then I probably would have did something different. But it turned out by the time I got them there to the fob, that's when I found out they were on the fob. And,
wow.
Now this is 2:00 in the morning, Anthony?
Yes.
Wow. So everything's dark. Is there lights on or anything like that?
Well, we had some lighting, but it was also a full moon too as well. So
okay.
I'm good working at night. You know what I'm saying?
So like when you ran back, how close these members of Al-Qaeda were to you?
Oh, when I made it to the bunker, they were like, if you think about like city blocks, they were like 2 city blocks away from me. So like
you run back and just feet away, these members of Al-Qaeda right in front of you fighting to get into the base.
Well, okay, they were running down a road. Like if you go 2 blocks over, they were running down that road. And then I looked up, I'm like, that ain't us. You know what I'm saying? So when I got there to the I said, man, they here. And I said, yeah, we're trying to tell you that we're here. And somehow my comms weren't working right, but they said they were trying to tell me they were there. I said, yeah, they're coming down the back side. And then that's when I heard somebody holler my name. And I turned around and boom, that's when I got hit.
So when you got hit, what was like, did you actually see where you were getting hit or you just kind of didn't see it?
I kind of didn't see it. I just assumed it came from that truck coming up that backside of the fob, which later on they told me it was.
And what did you get hit with?
I got hit with a RPG, an anti-tank RPG. It was sent to bust the bunker up to kill the folks in the bunker, but it hit me before it hit the bunker.
Do you remember seeing it coming, or is this something someone told you later?
That was something someone told me later. I didn't see it coming, but I did hit a mortar later. I didn't hit an RPG. I just felt its impact. And later on, I found out it was an RPG that hit me.
So, do you have any recollection of after you got hit with the RPG?
Yes. All right. After I got hit with the
What did,
RPG,
what did,
I pushed one of the girls into the bunker. And right when I did that, the RPG exploded. And then my body started shaking. Later on, I found out I got hit with 4 50 cal rounds to the body. And then the mortar went off 20 feet.
Which is the Beckett round, you means, right?
Yes, exactly. I always say 50 cal rounds
The Beckett
to
rounds.
get people to understand.
They are equivalent to 50 cal rounds. Yeah, it's actually an anti-craft gun.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, they situated this gun in the back of a Toyota trucks, any kind of a truck that can handle it, and it's God, man, I can't imagine being hit by an RPG and then someone opens fire.
Sometimes it almost you can catch them firing off of them sometimes, and it almost turn their truck over, trying to shoot off of those little Toyota trucks.
That's fact. Wow. It actually shakes the truck when they open fire, because I have seen it. It shakes the truck how powerful it is, because it's not a normal gun. It's like a Russian Doshka. It is not supposed to be for humans. It's supposed to be against. It's an anti-craft gun.
Right.
So when the RPG hits your body, at that point, did you feel parts of your body just kind of went out in its own?
No, what I felt, I lost feeling. It felt like I stuck my finger. Well, I don't know if y'all did it when y'all was a kid. You know how you take a battery and stick it on your tongue and you get that tingling feeling?
Yeah.
That's what my whole body felt like. Well, what had happened was when the RPG went through me, it severed my spine. So that's why I didn't have the pain, because it had cut through the cords of my spine.
Your spine was severed?
Right. It was fully disconnected by 1 inch. So that's
did you feel the impact of the 4 bullets that hit you, or were you already out at that point?
I was already out of what I was doing then. I think it was more like muscle memory. Because after I got hit with the RPG, I was still trying to move and get up and get people going. But it was more like muscle memory type deal. Like you train so much that you just keep doing stuff until you just can't do it no more.
So I'm going to re-round you a little bit here.
Yes, sir.
You run back to the bunker. Member of Al-Qaeda shoot you with an RPG from the back of a truck. And the RPG flies down and shoot you in the middle of your body. Oh my God. Like, seriously, man. Like, at that point, when the RPG hit you and hit your body, it went through. How far did the RPG blow up away from you?
The RPG blew up away from me about 2 feet.
So it hit you before it exploded, and then after it went through you, basically, then it exploded behind you?
Correct.
Wow.
That's how
Jesus, man. I'm telling you, like every time you tell me this story.
Because a lot of people they couldn't understand how I was hurt. But what happened was the reason I got hurt like I did, because when it went through, it cut my arm, like had my arm hanging. Then when it exploded, it blew everything else off, and I was able to see my foot up by my head. The only thing I could think of was just
Jesus Christ
in that direction, and then that's when the mortar went off, and that's when everything went blank.
Are you saying you saw your own foot, like your own severed foot?
No, it wasn't severed. It was still on there. It just was up there, like sitting up by here, by my head. I was trying to get up, and that's why I couldn't get up, because my leg was on this side, but it was still connected to my body. It's just that everything was shattered.
Oh my God!
Wow. And my arm was hanging. So I knew something was
wrong.
Man. Like I couldn't figure out what was going on, but my mind just said, "Keep fighting." And that's all I could think of was just keep fighting. That's the last thing I remember was talking to my battle buddy, Captain Felder, at the time. And the only thing that I could tell him was, man, just keep fighting. But at the time I was talking to him, later on I found out he wasn't even alive when I was talking to him.
So was he killed by that same RPG?
Yeah, when the RPG exploded, it killed him. It blew the whole bottom part of his body off. A piece of shrapnel went right through his body. Cut.
Now, did you feel any pain at the time, or?
No, I didn't feel any
Wow,
pain.
man.
I just felt that it felt like I got electrocuted. But it, I don't know if nobody's never been shocked before. It's kind of like putting that shocking feeling on your tongue from a battery. How you stick an 8-volt battery, but my whole body was just stinging. But it wasn't like I'm in pain or agony to holler. I just knew something was wrong and something wasn't right because I couldn't feel stuff.
How many people were killed that day?
There was a total. After they took me off the killed in action list, it was 4 other guys. Originally, it was listed as 5, but it was actually 4 that passed away, and one of them was my battle buddy, Captain Felder.
And how well did you know the captain?
Oh, we were tight. He was my fraternity brother. We hung together. We did everything together. We had prayer meetings together on the post. We had Bible studies together. We always looked out for each other. He was the headquarters company commander, and we always kept meeting up with each other, trying to make sure we got our stuff together, watching each other. So we knew each other even before getting deployed.
I'll tell you, Anthony, I can't imagine fighting people through the night. Like I used to get attacked in the middle of the night, and I know it's terrifying because when you're fighting during the night is a completely different animal than fighting during the day.
Yes.
You don't see what's in front of you. So I can't imagine what that attack was like and what the intent of these members of Al-Qaeda was like. Were they trying to take down the base? Were they trying to kidnap American soldiers alive? Were they trying to get bodies? Were they trying to... You just never know, man. Like when attacks like that happen, usually this kind of enemy will push as stronger as they can and kind of see how far they go.
Correct.
So I can't imagine. I'm sorry, go ahead again.
I think it was like they were pulling a test on us. The best way I can decide to see how far they can go with what they were doing. You know what I'm saying? It was like a cat and mouse game. They're trying to see how far they can get in or how far they can get into the post area. And then, because I figured those guys that did that, I don't think they thought they were going to get out. But I think they were seeing how far they can get in to first cab top. You have to, we had that warehouse for the top for the first cab. I think they were trying to see how close they could get to that. And they didn't succeed.
Anthony, how many of them do you think were attacking the base that night?
On our end, from the report that I read on our end, it was 22 guys. And they tried to leave the way they came, and that's when the Apaches got there from Anaconda and kind of like took them out, just like cleared the area.
So basically, some of them were killed in the process.
Correct.
Hey, my kid, think about this, man. It's an attack in the middle of the night. It could be 2 guys, 4 guys, 22 guys. It's still, how do you see your enemy when you're in the middle of the night?
You don't even know how many are out there, right?
Yeah, you don't know how many are they pushing at you.
That's the biggest thing is when you're fighting that type of fight. It's one thing when you go out, but when somebody comes in, you got to make sure you're not shooting the wrong person. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You got to make sure that you don't get so hyped that you just start shooting anything and end up shooting your own people. So you got to be on 2 sides.
Scary.
So Anthony, what is the last memory you have before you blacked out after you were shot?
The last memory I have was them trying to put me on a helicopter, and somebody said, "Get his arm." That was the last memory I heard. But,
And by get his arm, you mean your severed arm?
correct.
Wow. So they were trying to put you on a helicopter and then you blacked out. What happened after that?
Well, it was between a session. So let me walk you back. I had blacked out after the mortar attack. And then when I came to, they were trying to put me on a helicopter, and I heard someone say, "Get his arm." And that's when I know, like, oh, crap. You know, I lost my arm. And then that was the last thing that I remember at that time. And then it was everything else is what everybody told me what happened from that point and what I read in reports from that point. And that was the last thing I remembered. And there was a time I remember there was at one point I was studying to be a Catholic priest. And I remember a guy standing over me trying to read the 23rd Psalms. And I told him, like, dude, I ain't dead yet. But I wasn't even talking, brother. I thought I was talking, but I wasn't talking.
So that was like a dream or something?
No, everything happened, but they just didn't hear me talking. Like, I thought I was talking, but I wasn't talking to him. But he knew I was saying something. And I was really trying to tell him that I'm not dead yet. Don't read the 23rd Psalms over me. You know.
Because they made the hole into your collarbone. Mm-hmm. And that was your only way of breathing.
I think like a tracheotomy, I think.
They tried to do a field trach on me here. And it collapsed. So they came up through here to get here so I can breathe. So it's kind of like they made like a little hose so I can breathe when they found out I was alive, because they had given me the wrong blood at the time.
And I wanted to get through when they put you on the helicopter, they flew you to Balad, correct?
Correct. And
Balad was actually the second combat hospital.
Mm-hmm. They were calling it. Remember, they were calling it.
Balad was the second. Yeah. Yeah, Balad was actually the second combat hospital in Iraq. Mm-hmm. So they had Ibn Sina in the gray zone where I actually went. And they had Balad, which is actually, it's a little bit different than what the other one is. Balad specializes in head injuries, like more neurology kind of thing. And it's a tent city. It's actually a combat hospital that are made out of tents. And usually depends on where you get injured in Iraq at the time. If you get injured closer to Balad, it makes sense that they will fly you to Balad right away. If you're injured to the head with a certain injury, most likely the medevac will take you to Balad. If it's a different kind of injury in the body, then most likely they will fly you to Ibn Sina, which is the green zone.
How far is Balad from Camp Taji?
No, it's not far. It's literally maybe about like half an hour on the helicopter, not even. And some of these medevacs will actually be moving faster than you think.
And see, I had a severe head injury because they had to cut my Kevlar off. So that was one of the main reasons.
Makes sense why they sent you there. Mm-hmm. And it's these.
So they get you to what's the name of it again?
So Balad. Right?
Yeah, so Balad. They get you to Balad. What happens then?
So basically, if he had that injury to the head, most likely Balad would have been the hospital he has to go to. Mm-hmm. Truly, these medevacs, man, the way they are, I mean, look, these combat medevacs, like, the medics that comes in and get you out of this. I mean, kudos to these guys. These are some of the best guys I've ever seen in the business in combat. Reason why is because they're trained so well to get in and out of conflict areas faster than light. I mean, you're talking about, imagine yourself. This is like, Anthony's story is pretty much like Camp Keating, Afghanistan, except it's during the night and it's pitch black. Imagine that you're in the middle of a firefight and things are flying left and right, motors, rockets, bullets, whatever it is. And these helicopters are trained to get into conflict zones, pick up the injured and leave with the most calming tone you'll ever see. I have saw it happen. And it's just amazing, right? There's all kind of different beautiful exotic jobs in the military that makes you feel proud. But there was really nothing like this, where you see guys come in the middle of a conflict, gets out like nothing is happening. They're calm. They're not yelling at you. They're not putting more pressure on you. They're just doing their job.
Mhm.
They get in, pick up the injured, and leave fast and pull out of these conflict areas faster than anything. And truly, the way they value your life, the way they put you first, the way they get you out, it's just amazing. I didn't want to like pass these individuals
Yeah.
and what they do,
Correct.
because like the nurses and the doctors and everything they do in the hospital, it is such an honorable job.
Yeah.
But the combat medics and the medevacs, I mean, look, man, these are some of the best. And the way they do this, I mean, if there was a real hero in that fight, I trust me,
I
is that
agree.
helicopter pilot
Oh yeah.
and that
Yeah.
medic that is coming out of the helicopter in the middle of the craziest firefights
Yeah.
to pick up that injured guy and make sure that person stays alive while on that flight until they can land to a combat hospital.
Because they're landing and taking off under fire.
Exactly.
They don't have weapons of their own, right? They're not shooting back. They're just grabbing the guys and getting out of there.
Literally all they have is the two helicopter gunners, the two Black Hawk helicopter gunners on the sides. And these gunners are also trained in what to do in certain. Sometimes they do actually give you a great cover when they land. So they're not only there sometimes to pick up the injured, they actually know exactly what to do. Like they trained their whole life for this thing. They trained, all they did is this little moment. They trained for that moment. There's one thing when you train for a firefight and how to fight and how to maneuver, but these guys just trained how to fight in that moment, how to provide you the cover, how to get the injured. And their biggest priority will be the injured person to get it out. I mean, for any medevac or combat medic that did this kind of a job, man, nothing but respect. Because when you're injured, when you are the person bleeding, when you're in that situation, this is the longest time in your life.
Oh yeah.
And this is the longest time for the medic that's on the ground trying to keep you alive. And, the way they do their job, man, kudos to these guys, nothing but respect. But Anthony, when they got you in the helicopter and they took off, how they took you to Balad, and obviously at that point, they thought you were dead. Please take me in details. How did that? And I know this is a crazy story, so please provide me all the details. How did that go down?
The way it went down was when they decided that I couldn't be. They decided that I lost resuscitation. I couldn't. I lost a heartbeat according to the machinery that was there. So they listed me killed in action, placed me on the helicopter to get me to Balad. When I got to Balad, that's when the nurse, they couldn't find my dog tag. So somehow something went wrong with my identification codes. You know how you have your, and they put all your, thinking of the word, it just slipped my mind, your facts, all your stuff that's put in a bag and it goes with you. And but they somehow it got separated, so they couldn't find my stuff. So she had to come over to check and see what was going on. So when they got me there, she unzipped the body bag and she just saw the bubbles coming from my neck and stuff. And they just took me in the body bag and just lifted up, took me straight in and started working on me. But where they had
And I'm going to stop you right there. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Anthony. You were announced dead and you were put on a body bag.
Correct.
And the nurse went back to get your dog tags, and that's when she saw that you were breathing still.
Correct. They said that I had resuscitated. Somehow I had resuscitated some kind of way. But the problem was the body bag was zipped up. So even though I had resuscitated, I couldn't breathe. You get what I'm saying? Because when you zip the bags up, there's no air in them. So when she came through, all that air and pressure that was in there when she unzipped it, that's when she was able to see like that I was still breathing. There was bubbles coming out of the side, coming out of the tray. So then she went to go tell the doctors.
what else was in that body bag besides your belongings and your dog tag?
Uh, they had put my arm in there, and they had well, I was considered dead, so it wasn't like nothing proper to do for a dead guy, right? So my guts were like in a bag. So like they just scooped my guts up and put it like in like a little plastic bag and like set it in there right beside me in the body bag. Because when people die, like their bowels loose. So I had lost my bowels. So they just took the rest of my bowels. They just put it in a bag and set it right there next to me and put my arm right there next to me. And then they're supposed, I lost my boots. My boots had blew off my feet. So they didn't have my boots. So they had all my stuff in like a plastic bag and they stuffed all that in there with me.
So basically all of your remains. Do you have any memory or recollection of being in that bag or no?
No, I don't have no recollection of being in the bag. I do have a slight recollection of it was dark and then it got light. And I assume that's because she unzipped the body bag.
So if it hadn't been for the mix up with your dog tags or identification, you would be dead today.
Correct. I would have suffocated in the body bag.
It's amazing how sometimes when it's not your day, it is not your day. And I cannot imagine the feeling of that nurse. I mean, obviously everything was meant to happen, right? Like that dog tag that got left in your body bag is what saved your life. And I hope that you have this dog tag to this day.
I got
and it really just, I can't imagine this happening. And what did that nurse went through when she opened your body bag? You're announced dead. You're dead in the morgue, and she's trying to get your dog tag and shut that body bag again. And she noticed you were breathing. So give me in details. I know you were not there at that point, but what were you told when she opened that bag? What was the details? How did the surgeons, I have seen how surgeons react in a combat hospital. I have worked in a combat hospital. I've seen like how they react. I can't imagine the reaction in that hospital when that scream came through. So please take me through that.
It seemed, when I was told that everybody just dropped everything, just like got to me where the body bag was, and they didn't even take me out of the body bag. They just unzipped the full body bag and just spread it out over the table and just started working on me. So they were quick. I think they had almost like from the time that she went for help to the time they got me to the table, wasn't even 10 minutes. That's how fast they were moving to get me there and start working. It's just that if you know how that type of hospital was, they only have so much blood on hand, not like it is in Baghdad. So the blood they did have on hand, that's what they gave me to try to save my life. Mm. So it ended up being, I think it's really incredible how.
I'm sorry. I think it's just really incredible how they didn't just write you off. Because remember, you're in a bag, you're half blown up, you have a severed arm in the bag with you, your guts are in a bag. They didn't just like, oh, well, he's a lost cause. Like they put all their effort into saving your life. That's really incredible.
Combat hospitals, man, they are, combat hospitals and doctors that works in combat and front zone. And, this was the 2004. This was the beginning of the war. Pretty much this was the most wild year in the war, 2004. So I think things always got better as longer you spend more time in that war.
Yes.
But the beginning, you are really figuring things out. I mean, when Anthony tells you they gave him the wrong blood, imagine if one of the nurses come back screaming, telling you that someone who is technically supposedly be dead. There's no way he could have made it. I mean, how many times do you hear that some human being got hit by an RPG rocket and made it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are people that I watch die that get hit by an RPG inside of a truck and didn't make it. There are people that got killed inside of armored trucks by an RPG and didn't make it. How many times do you hear that an actual soldier got hit by an RPG to the body and made it? I mean, there is no way in Earth
Incredible.
this could be. This is why I call this. It's one of the biggest miracles of the Iraq War.
Yeah. Hey, Anthony, I want to hear more about the blood, but do you remember the nurse's name? Do you know her name by any chance?
I know her last name is Davenport.
Davenport.
And there's
Wow.
a picture I take. There was one nurse that took care of me during that time, and her name was Susan, and she has like a last name, German name, but I called her my Artemis. I tell her I'm Aries and she's my Artemis, and we got a picture because she's short and she's small, and she still got me around. You know what I'm saying? She still sacrificed that time to get me around, and her name was Susan. I call her my Artemis.
So tell me the truth, Anthony. Since I know you're my buddy, did you hit on the nurses back then?
I find that's an interesting question that you asked, my brother.
If you had the power, I know you would.
Yes,
I know you would. But you're exhausted. If it wasn't for that fucker hitting you with the RPG, you would have gotten a good opportunity to hit him.
I do not confirm or deny.
Yeah, I mean, God, man, like seriously, your story is just blows my mind, man. I've been at war for 5 years. I saw all kind of things, and your story still shakes my head. It just still shakes my brain how it went down. And not to go in personal. At that point, how many kids did you have?
I actually had 6 kids.
Wow, you had 6 children.
Everybody was grown, but one. Yes.
Wow.
So I know prior to all of when this was all happening, I know that they called your sister. Is that the first person they called home?
Yes. Well, they originally tried to call home to my wife, but they couldn't get anyone. So they called my sister, who was next on the list, and she's like, and coming from a military family, everybody knew what to do. So my sister
and they
jumped
told
on
her
the next person that correct. And then
they told her that
mom,
you are possibly. They told her that possibly you might be dead.
Correct. They said they told that's why I get that confirm or deny from. That's kind of like my inside joke. And they told her, they said, we cannot confirm or deny if your brother is dead, but we think he is. And that's when everybody in the house lost it. So they
already have lost your brother.
Right. We had already lost my brother. And, my mom went through a little moment of that time where she had a slight heart attack when they told her, but she just couldn't believe I was dead though. With it, So she had a slight heart attack, and my sister and them had to take care of her while they tried to get to me, because at that time, after they had told her, a week had already passed, and they had got me to launch school, and they decided to tell them if I was still going to be alive or still be dead. And
so pretty much your family prepared for a funeral.
Correct. And
wow.
What I was trying to find for you was my death certificate, because they had already wrote up my death certificate and had already sent it to my daughter, who freaked her out. She got it and she tore it up and said, my dad's not dead. You can take this back. The military police showed up with her with a flag and a death certificate.
To your daughter?
Yeah.
How old was she at the time?
She was 15.
Do you feel like it was just her intuition that she knew you weren't dead, just a feeling, or you just think like she just didn't believe it?
She just didn't believe it. She had told me later that she had a dream that I had got hurt real bad, but the dream didn't say that I was dead in the dream. So she just didn't believe I was dead. So when they handed her, she gave them the flag back and she tore the death certificate and gave it back to the military police that showed up.
Wow, that's crazy. And that was your oldest. That was your oldest child.
Right, that was my oldest child. She was living in she was up in Columbus, Mississippi at the time when they got a hold to her. She was in a special I forgot what they call those schools, like a Juilliard school when they got in touch with her in Mississippi. So she was going through ballet, modeling, and it's like one of those special schools you go to for your talents and still get.
Oh, like a charter school, maybe?
It's a form of a charter school, but it's like a Juilliard school.
Okay. I cannot. I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine what your family had went through. Not to disregard what you were going through, but your family had lost your brother already in the process, who was serving in the military, and getting that call. I mean, I can't imagine, man, like what the feeling was. Your kids, your sister, your mom, and so tell me about the first time you opened your eyes in the hospital. Like, what was going on? How did you feel? What was going on? Like, when you opened your eyes, did you realize? Did you really realize what had happened, or did you feel like you had a memory loss of somehow?
Well, I had a memory loss somehow because when I woke up, my arm was gone, my leg was sitting up. So when I woke up, my mind was thinking it was like a lot of time hadn't passed, but come to find out I was out for 62 days. And then I started having a bad reaction to some of the medications and my body started shaking. I started having some seizures and stuff. So they had to induce the coma for 2 more weeks until I can stabilize my body.
How many total of surgeries did you have?
Total surgeries I had was 64 surgeries during that time.
Jesus Christ.
Well, so you had 64 surgeries over what period of time?
From the time they got me to Brooke Army Medical Center in April all the way up to August, right before my birthday was my last time I let them cut on me for anything.
And how long was that?
That was in 2004.
I'm just trying to figure out like what period of time, like how many weeks or months was that?
62 days. It comes out to like
so you had 64 surgeries over 62 days time?
Correct. And the only other surgeries I had since then, which I really don't count, was to get that rod out my leg and to close my colostomy bag down. What they call collapsing the colostomy bag.
So you probably don't recall any of these surgeries because you were out the whole time.
Correct. They had all those while I was out in the coma. They weren't really expecting me to wake up at the time when I woke up.
So you wake up in a hospital one day. Where are you, and what did you see when you woke up?
Well, I woke up during the nighttime, so there were no nurses or nobody on call at the time. So when I woke up, I was just in the hospital, and that's when I felt the pain. That's when, like when I woke up, everything was hurting, and so I didn't know how to call out for anything. But then I looked over, and my sister was sitting over there, And I saw her jump up and run out to tell everybody that I was awake, that I had woke up.
And where were you?
We was at Brooke Army Medical Center in Fort Sam, Houston, San Antonio, Texas.
Okay. So the first thing you saw was your sister.
Yes, it was my sister.
So take me through after you got your rehab and you started getting yourself back into, you know, I know, not to get personal, I know that there's a lot of events, personal events that happen in your life. There's a lot of shocking moments and moments that would have break any human being at this point that you went through after everything that you've been through. When you woke up in the hospital and you started getting yourself and started realizing that you actually had lost your arm, you lost part of your leg, you lost some of part of your body. How did Major Anthony Smith of the U.S. Army took these personal shocks, or say personal hits, mentally?
I originally took it pretty hard because at one about the first month, I kind of felt like a failure as an officer because I didn't bring everybody back home. And why am I the one that's still alive when others had perished? Because there was a guy that got hit with a 2-inch piece of shrapnel and died. And I'm the one that got hit with the mortar, the RPG, and still alive. I couldn't just grasp my head around stuff like that at first. So I had to stop really asking myself questions and start figuring out what I need to do right now to get myself back on my feet and go see what I can do about the families that had lost who they had lost. Because when I had woke up, all the funerals were already done. All the parades were already done. I was out during all that time. So when I got up, one of my first things I was going to do was go see those families that lost soldiers under me. But it was a big shock. My mind was everywhere. I had questions about reality. Am I really awake right now? You know what I'm saying? Or am I still dreaming? Or am I still in the coma? I went through one part trying to check myself to make sure that I didn't do nothing wrong spiritually. I messed up. Did I get hurt because I did something wrong with God? Or am I picked to do something else? Or did I have a purpose because of this? I went through that avenue. And then I had to get myself together to realize, what I'm going to do about my kids that are still here. How I'm going to take care of my kids in the condition that I'm in. So all that was rolling around in me for about 2 or 3 months.
I got to tell you, man, it's different when you get shot and you have nobody. You don't have a wife and kids. And it's different when you have a family right behind you at home. And I saw those guys that had a family back home, had a wife and kids. And, this is something I always went through my head when I was in Iraq, that if I had gone, I wouldn't affect anybody, Now that I have, children of my own, Jesus, man, I can never imagine the feeling that you'll go through, right? Like there is a burden in your shoulders that this is not just you going away. You just don't know what you're leaving behind and what's going to happen to them and how his life's going to move on. I can't imagine the feeling of an injured soldier at a combat hospital and what's going through their head and how their life would change right after that. And I got to say that some of the most strongest, most motivating people that I ever met in my life, superheroes, I happen to be injured veterans, people who started doing things after their injury that they have never done before they were injured. And I know you're an example of it, that you had interest in challenging yourself prior to your injury. And when you got injured, it's almost like you just got all the confidence in the world to do every crazy thing out there. And I know you were out there dealing with health issues and dealing with all the problems you're dealing with. and somehow you found power within you to get back on your feet and started doing all the things that you couldn't do before. How take me through these moments?
Uh, First of all, I went through trying to go through my recovery, trying to go through my therapy. It's kind of like I felt like I was getting, we were kind of like the first ones coming back. So it kind of like you felt like you were shunned from everybody, and it was kind of hard getting on your feet to do what you need to do. I decided like I had to have a purpose. I had to be able to do something. So when I stepped out there to do something, I ran into this group called Challenge Athlete Foundation, Operation Rebound, and ran into this guy called Nico Magalago, who said like, "Hey, bro, if you want to do it, we can do it." And I was like, I done heard that before. So I just started working on myself. And at the time, I was kind of getting ready to shy away from doing sports, and I was just trying to figure out what can I do to still make my kids proud. Because during my first year of recovery, I didn't feel like a proud, accomplished soldier. I felt like I failed, just to be honest with you, because I didn't bring my guys back. And some of my guys were still over there fighting, and I'm not allowed to go over there and keep helping them fight. So after I got over that, and I started getting into a deep recovery, working with my mental capabilities to do things, then I started getting into sports that helped give that up. To get me off.
So you are a black belt in what martial arts?
I'm a black belt in karate. I'm a black belt in taekwondo. I'm a black belt in judo.
Pretty amazing, man. So I told you, I was threatening you a few days ago when we met that I was going to do judo match with you at Cracker Barrel.
Yeah, I was giving you enough time to get in shape so that I didn't want any excuses.
You know, one of the funny thing with Anthony, man, is like his humor. And we were sitting in the middle of the Cracker Barrel, me and Anthony had a bug on his arm, like the arm that's not injured arm, on his left arm. And clearly Anthony couldn't kill the bug with his other arm. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I saw Anthony is elbowing the chair of the next person next to him, right? And I was wondering, I was like, why is Anthony elbowing the chair, like hitting the chair, like almost like John Jones in the UFC? He was like this, boom, boom, boom. And I was like, Anthony, why are you doing that? Why are you hitting yourself? And he's like, I was trying to kill a bug. He's like, how else did I kill this bug? And I was like, yeah, you're right. And that's what I love it, man. I love I can laugh with Anthony. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Anthony, when you do these, when you're black belt in karate and what did you say, taekwondo?
Correct.
And judo.
Oh, so in judo, are you fighting against other able-bodied people or also injured people?
I mostly fight against able-bodied people. There was a time I was in the para taekwondo league, where it was based on disability, but I'm still the most disabled guy on the floor. So most of the time, those guys that were calling themselves para-athletes still had 2 arms and 2 legs, so I didn't understand how they were para-athletes, but I whooped them up anyway. And
so you're beating up on able-bodied people with 1 arm.
Correct.
And he's been kicked out of pro competitions. And they only allowed him to do amateur because they didn't feel like he was going to be able to do it. He challenged himself in a way that is incredible, right? Like any human being out there that is looking down on themselves should really look at Anthony and what he does every single day. Anthony trains people at his dojo. He has a dojo. He does not charge people at his dojo. He's training hundreds of kids for free.
Wow.
The things that he has done over the years is just amazing. And what competition did they kick you out of?
It was called the MMA Explosion in Las Vegas. And they felt because of I was going to try to go pro at the time, but I couldn't pass the medical board because they said I had my head injury showed up too seriously on the scan that they were scared if I got hit too hard in the head, it might kill me. So I didn't get to go pro. But then they turned around and said, but you can fight amateur. I'm like, wait, I can fight for free and get hurt? but I can't fight for money and get hurt. That didn't make no sense. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? You
Well, I love your passion, Anthony, and I know you have your dojo today. And is your dojo something that you're just doing out of love to train kids and help kids to kind of find their way?
Yeah. Well, you know, I figured there's a lot of kids out here that get caught up in gangs, don't have a father figure, don't have mentors. So I decided to open up the dojo to start bringing those kids in that needed that mentorship and needed somewhere to get off the street. One of my things is discipline isn't punishment. So I'm getting them to understand that even though life isn't fair, you still got to live life. You got to live it appropriately if you need to get to where you need to be. So I try to get them out of their circumstances and look at where they can be outside of their circumstances when I teach them martial arts. So let them know it's
And
more than
these
just
kids could
punching and
not
kicking.
find a better mentor.
I
Oh,
love
thank
that.
you.
Anthony, have any of your children joined the military or inspired to join the military?
I have one that has joined the military. His name was Melvin. He joined the military. He's taken off. And I had two that are signed up to go to the Marines that are training with me in the mornings. Trying to get
Yeah,
ready to get
I
physical
understand those are
fitness.
the kids you're training, but I meant like your direct children.
Oh, none of my direct children went into the military.
No.
Yeah, I mean it's
My
amazing, man. Like what
13-year-old,
you're doing.
I'm with Braylon right now.
Yeah.
He might end up being a Marine. That's all he talks about is the Marines. And I'm like, bro, you want to be in the Army. The Army. Your dad was Army.
You kind of promote your own branch. That's unfair, bro. That's unfair.
My own son, I come from a military family as well. My father served and all five of his sons served. And my own son, he says, Dad, I think I want to join the military. Do you mind if I join the Marines? Because I think they're a little bit more badass than the Navy.
I think everybody's more badass than the Navy. Except the Air Force, of course. Yeah, Anthony, where can people find you? I know a lot of people are going to want to find out where you are. So if you can please give me a quick take into where people can find you. I know you're, if you can give me, where can people find you if they needed to reach out to you?
They can find me. I live here in Blythe, Arkansas. My dojo address is 603 North 6th Street, Blythe, Arkansas, 72315. My telephone number is 870-740-5055. And my email for the school here is called ironfist424@yahoo.com. That's the school address because I have what they call the shotgun Iron Fist right here. So it's called Iron Fist 424.
Awesome. And where's your? Do you have an Instagram?
Yes, I have an Instagram that's called atrain_424. And I have a Facebook page that's Anthony's Martial Arts without the apostrophe. Just Anthony's without the apostrophe Martial Arts. You can catch me on there.
And I know me and you have both been through the brain treatment and with Defenders of Freedom, which they do a lot of beautiful things to help veterans out there and connect veterans with one another, which how me and you got connected. And, I don't consider myself that I'm, I think I'm more brain injured than you because you get to have more humor than I am.
Yeah. You well, also stayed
ladies,
longer than I did too. you was in that hole a little bit longer than I was as well.
And before we close this, Anthony, is there any message out there that you want to give to people who are not believing in themselves today? What would you say to them?
I would say to them that look in yourself and find yourself, and no matter what you're going through, it is better than what it looks like. Don't let the situations dictate your outcome. Don't let what's going on around you cause you to take your life. And that goes out to my brothers that we're out here to help you. You don't have to do this thing alone. You're never meant to do it alone. And one of my favorite sayings I always like to tell you is you can't keep a good man down no matter how hard you try. So whatever you're going through, we're here to help. And if you need someone to call, you can call us, and always keep your head up so you can see where you're going and work your way through those situations. And there's a lot of help out here. If you look, all them folks back there on that board, them patches, all them folks help me. Everybody. And one of the biggest things is you got to be willing to accept the help that's coming. Even if it's too much help, get the help and get you where you need to be so you can live a prosperous life and where you're living at today.